Wednesday, but some people you can't get them Wednesdays, you got to take them Friday, and if I have to get them Sunday, then maybe I'll do that. But and this brother of mine, a friend of mine who is joining me tonight on Let's Talk, is one of those guys I can't get on Wednesday unless I plan for it 6 months down the road. But we'll see what happens for the next time, because I'm almost sure that he'll come back to join me again. But I have with me this evening Bishop Dr. Roger Ball, and one of the most popular guys around the region, in our church community, of course. And so he's well known, by virtue of his profession and all of those things that are attached in that you'll hear a little bit more as we go forward. So I want to welcome my friend, Bishop Roger Ball, to join me on Let's Talk with the Doc on this special evening. Good to have you, my friend.
Thank you very much, my brother and my friend and colleagues in the faith. Your introduction is humbles me, and and I must have paid you a lot of money behind the scene to say those nice things. But thank you so much for having me, and also thank you for the amazing work that you continue to do. It's great to be with you this evening.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate that. I am glad to have you, and welcome to all who is joining us, where by whatever means you're joining us. It's good to have you. Um, I have so much that I'd like to talk to you about. As I said, maybe we can't finish it tonight, because there are a lot of things, and especially where we are in this season, in this atmosphere, in the midst of these crises. Um, Somebody like you, I think, not only in the field of not only in your regular profession, but from a profession, but as a minister, and a combination of theology, psychology, human, behavioral sciences, education. There's, as I look at your bio, which I'll brief over a while ago, in a minute, I am at a loss if I just say that, but I think that you're still a young man, so no wonder you're still pursuing all these things and still running yourself hot, because you're still young.
I hope I don't burn out before my time.
Well, I hope not. I hope not. I hope not. We don't want to pass the engine by the wayside, burn up.
That's right. That's right.
Overheat, right?
Yes.
All right. So we have Bishop Dr. Roger Ball with me this evening, and let's talk with the doc. And just a gleaning of his ministry, that he has been in ministry since age 17. When he preached his first sermon, he has been, at 11 level in church ministry, like myself. I said maybe the only thing I haven't done was being the women's ministry director.
You might have done some of that along the way, I'm sure.
But at least in my younger days, I used to call us bodyguards. So at least we were there as bodyguards.
That's right.
in the women's ministry time. So we've been
Yes.
there, done that. But is a pastor of Family Worship Center in the Bronx. Has been pastoring for 18 years. Bishop Ball has also served as motivational speaker at workshops, retreats, and camp, and has been a counselor for 20 years. That's interesting. For 20 years, has been a counselor. He and his wife, of course, Lady Seneca Ball, they are co-directors of the family ministries in the Northeast region, cover the Church of God of Prophecy. And I would even go, well, maybe out of respect, I'll go to some of these degrees.
You don't need
I
to.
don't, out of respect for, the degrees. Uh, um, Secularly served as assistant principal within the New York City Board of Education. Prior to that, he was a program director of the Archdiocese of New York. That sounds like Episcopalian or
Catholic,
a
actually.
Catholic, right?
Yes,
The
yes.
Archdiocese of New York. But one of what catch my attention here, and he's been working at the Fordham University. He teaches there. He has degrees there, a lot of degrees from there, and still pursuing more that we maybe look at later on. But one of what I see here, first of all, is the you're a program director within the African American Male Initiative of the Children's Aid Society. What's that? I
Well,
haven't heard about that one.
yeah, and I've not done that. That's in my past work. So First of all, the Children's Aid Society is one of, if not the largest social service agencies in New York City, right? You have
Okay.
places like Children's Aid Society, Graham Wyndham, Catholic Charities. It's, it's right there where they have, foster care agencies and clinics and, all the, all the social service pieces, families, youth, and they also in schools, so on and so forth. But a number of years ago, probably at least a decade ago, I got this really, really interesting opportunity to work for the Children's Aid Society as a mentor for young men. In fact, I remember going, for the job interview, and they're locking the doors and says, "We're not letting you go until you accept the job." So literally, they said that you must take this job.
That
And
was you.
that
They
that
weren't
that
letting you until you take the job.
yeah, they said you must take this this job. I'd never seen anything like that. And
You were held hostage for that job.
yeah, and it was one of the most fulfilling jobs I've ever had in my entire life. I worked with young boys, young men of color. Since my cohort, they were fourth graders, and I worked with them until they almost graduated from high school. I mean, like everything, like getting them tutoring, going to their schools, advocating for them, filling out applications for all kinds of programs and services for them. And I've watched those young men grew up just like my own children, until I moved to the New York City Department of Education, and I'm still in contact with a lot of those young people. So that was just an amazing job.
Okay, all right. So then you say it's a, maybe you look back and say it's a lucky thing they held me hostage.
It was good for me first. It was good for me. That hostage
Good for you.
situation was good for me because it was so fulfilling for me personally.
Well, good for you. Good for you. Life has a way of forming itself for us. Sometimes we don't plan and we don't know what the next step is going to be. And as I said to my brethren recently, in my one of my sermon references a couple Sundays ago, and I said one of these days, God will show you the mystery of your history,
Mm, mm,
mystery of your history.
mm.
So you would now get a chance to understand the path he has carved out for you and why he took you that spot. And you can't understand it until you begin to look back, when you can see something tangible that you're looking back at.
That's
If he tells you now, it would maybe scare you, but when you look back, he'll show you the mystery of your history. And so I'm thinking that that falls right in line with yours. Looking back at the mystery of that history, you said, maybe why did they push me and why did I have to take this? And but then when I look back, I said, God, I really
yeah.
do appreciate it.
Yeah, one of my favorite quotes is life is lived forward but understood backwards, right? It's lived
That's a good
forward
one.
but understood backwards. And so you're right. And thing for me, the thing's always is this. If I could only know in the moment what I will
Mm,
know tomorrow, then I would
mm.
stress. So my anxiety and my fear and my stress, it would, all dissipate. It would all go away. If I could understand today what I need, what I will know tomorrow.
You know what? There are two sides to that, though. There are
Yeah,
two sides to that, because that's the good side. If you can know the good things that's going to happen, but you could see ahead the dangers that lie ahead, you would not want to go down that path.
that is
And,
very
and
true.
oftentimes that path is designed to help to shape you into becoming the real
Yeah.
you later on down the road.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
But I readily admit that and this is for me personally. I readily admit that I do reflect on the anxieties of my youth or my younger age or another stage, and just reflecting on how, to the point that you make, understanding the mystery of your history. And so I say, man, that was a lot of worries that I did
I know.
unnecessarily.
Exactly.
Yeah,
If I only knew, if I
yeah,
only knew. But because we're Christians, and we're gonna get into the other stuff a little bit, but because we're Christians and our lives are in the hand of the Lord and we trust Him with our lives, it's kind of human not to be a little bit anxious and say, I don't know where it's gonna go, but God is not anxious like we are.
yes,
Because what we are surprised with when we get there, he said, yeah, I did, it's all of my plan. I'm not surprised, it's all of my plan. But then, as I said, it normally don't tell us what's next, don't give us a blueprint, because
that's
as much as we come through those things, it would scare us to death because we
yeah,
don't know what the end result was going to be. But
True.
when we look back, we can say, God, I appreciate you, because had it not been for your help, I would not even pull through this one.
That's right. And I believe it's Psalm 31. There's a great quote that says that my times are in God's hands. My
In God's
times
name.
are in His hands, and that brings me comfort every time that my times are in His hands.
Amen. Amen. Man, I respect you on your level of achievement educationally, secularly. It is so much for me to read here. You got two master's degree, one in religious education, one in social work, and the social work aspect of it now is, I think, becomes maybe one of the most important thing that you tool in your box to use today, and even as a Christian, as a pastor, that becomes so important in dealing with people, not only your congregants, but the people in your community, because it gives a better understanding of that. I have a little bit of humor here before I get into your reflection on your book. When I read through your bio and the and all this stuff that you have been achieving and still in pursuit of, the first thing came into my mind, is what the when Paul stood before Agrippa,
Mm.
before Festus, and began to declare his testimony of who he was and who he has become. And Festus said to him, "You're beside yourself, Paul. Much learning make you mad."
I feel mad sometimes.
That's exactly what I said. Much learning make you mad. And then I look into Ecclesiastes, and that is, for those who want to check it out, is Acts 26, going down 24, where Festus told Paul that much learning make him mad, because he was so articulate
Oh.
about his past and present experience and his reflection and his encounter with Christ. And then I look at Ecclesiastes 12, verse 12, and the wise man Solomon says, and
Writing
further,
many books.
right? And further, by these, my son, be admonished, on making many books there is no end, and much study is weariness to the flesh.
Mm, mm. Well, you want me to respond to that? I, I look, I agree, and I think that for me, I'm a student by nature, right? I'm a student by nature. I'm always reading. I am always studying. I am always learning, and for me, it's what brings me joy, right? My
Mhm.
wife oftentimes say to me, "I don't know how constantly." Just yesterday, I had a book that arrived in my mail, and I paged through it, and I rammed through it, in 2 hours or so, just to get the gist of it, and then I put it on. I want to know more, as Paul, said that I may know Him. I want to, I want to know more, and for me, this is, it brings me joy, and in a way, it supports and helps ministry and the kingdom of God at large and the world at large. But but I mean, look who is talking, by the way. I mean, not that you haven't amassed your PhD and your MA, and I'm just gonna let the cat out of the bag here just a little bit. I went to this brother's, to the good doctor's office once, and the amount of accolades and degrees and certificates that he has on his wall, I was like, what is, like there's no room on the wall for a fly to land, because
Wow.
it's like all taken up. So,
You've been
but
to my office. I don't remember you been to my, but yeah, okay, okay. I'll buy that. I'll buy that. Um, you know what? I am like you. I am like you. I crave knowledge.
yes,
I crave knowledge, not that I can be boastful or brag about it, but that I can know,
yeah,
because knowledge is power. And
mm,
and yes, I go after the opportunities as they arrive. I pursue things that I think would be beneficial to me and to my ministry, that I
yeah,
can meet people at all levels to minister to them. I don't want to just fall short simply because of my own ignorance, or lack of knowledge, or so experience and knowledge and all those help to make you a better minister, that you can talk to people at all levels. And yes, I something that I have one more to put on my wall that you didn't see, because I just finished my residency. So now I have also a 4 units of clinical pastoral education. So
Congratulations, my
yeah,
brother.
so thank you on that.
Yeah.
All right. So back to you. Um, you have your I know you say you have your first book, and I know about the book, The Tie That Binds and Bruises.
Yeah.
Sound like it's kind of, you know, counterproductive or contrary to what, okay, the tie that binds, it binds but it bruises. Somebody who looks at that title, what should they grasp from the title just right off the top?
Right. So it's the book is The Ties That Bind and Bruise, and and in a real sense, we are all in, relationality with each other. And when I was doing my doctoral study at Fordham University, I wanted to help families. I wanted to support couples. And the truth of the matter is, for me, part of the reason is because I've been loved, and I say this openly, candidly, and with great humility. I've been loved. I know what it feels like to be loved as a son, as a brother, to grow up in a family as the youngest of 6 siblings, that I was, protected, loved, cared for. And then at the age of 18, I fell in love with this absolutely stunningly beautiful girl, and loved me unconditionally and without reservation. And so I wanted to bring that sense of, connections and deep love and wholeness to my work and ministry. And so I studied marriage and family life at Fordham, and my doctoral dissertation is on exactly that. And so I sat down and I wrote this book, The Ties That Bind and Bruise, and it looks at things like rhythms of life, breaking bread together, eating, family time together, love, breakup, divorce, co-parenting, learning to take vacations together. And so it's an amalgamation of many different pieces. And so the book has been well received, well received, far greater received, greater than I could have even imagined. It's, I've traveled throughout the Caribbean speaking on the book, and people, buy it all the time, and talk about it all the time, use it as book club. So it has been, it's been a great, opportunity to bring some wisdom, especially to our faith community.
So that is rewarding, and I think in your field of ministry, that works perfect.
Yeah.
It fits right into the category of where your ministry falls. And just for those who are joining us on Facebook and YouTube, then the power you have in your hand is the power to share. That share button you have is your power. If you just share and pass it on to somebody else, what you hear here, somebody else will hear it. So that's what you have in your hand. Just hit your share button. Everybody does that. Guess what? We could bring the public in, and they could be part of this in conversation that is just getting into the nitty gritty of it. I have with me Bishop Dr. Roger Ball. He is a social worker, a pastor, a professor, and I would even a counselor, a family, a relationship therapist, and not even touched that yet. Okay, so um, what I want to talk to you about, Bishop, is from where I look at God, and in the time where we are in, because I think you're a perfect person to talk to in this time where we are in, because of your grasp on the human, in term, not one dimensional, but from a broad aspect of the trichotomy of the human. And and I look at the trichotomy, and I find it very interesting that God is obviously a God of trichotomy. We have sun, moon, and star, land, sea, and sky. We have Father, Son, Holy Ghost. We have church, Jews, Gentiles. You know what I mean? We have new heaven, new earth, new Jerusalem. And the list goes on. And so when
One
it
Lord,
comes
one faith, one baptism.
one Lord, one faith, one baptism, exactly. When we come to the human, we have body, soul, and spirit, mind, heart, and will. So all the trichotomy expands into the human as a being.
Yeah.
And from a ministry perspective, we need to be able to minister to the person from that level,
Yeah.
right? And so your studies, along with some of what I have done, not to the extent that you have done it, makes you a perfect person to talk to now from your level of ministry in relationship therapy, as we look at society now, church, outside of church, how do you see your ministry impacting people from the level of understanding the trichotomy of the human makeup?
It's a good question. um, for me, ministry has always been, and I've been very intentional about how ministry is defined for me,
Mhm,
and this gospel that we are all invited to share and to carry. The Greek word sozo, to save.
mhm,
I think for a lot of us Protestant and evangelical and Pentecostal Christians, when we talk about what it means to be saved, we oftentimes think about the soul, right? Saving of the soul, right? But
mhm.
in a real sense, to be saved, I mean, to really be saved, it is exactly what you reference as the trichotomy, and that is the mind, the body, and the soul must be attended to. John says, "Beloved, I wish above all things that you may prosper and
Mhm.
be in good health, even as your soul prosper." What he's really talking about, in a way, there is the trichotomy, like you just mentioned,
Right.
that we need to be inclusive, wholesome, in terms of our approach. So the mind needs to be fed, the mind needs to be healed, the mind
Mhm.
needs to be restored where it's broken, and the body the same thing, and and the soul. And so, in a real sense, you cannot minister to one at the negligence or neglect the other. You have to attend to the mind, you have to attend to the body, and you have to attend to the soul. And attending to the body, for example, is not just healing, it's feeding as well, right? It's feeding the body, it's teaching people how to live, eat healthy. It's also in service to the community, making sure that even during this pandemic, where the food lines are so long, and so many people are getting sick, that's feed. You have to attend to feeding the body. How do we protect each other? How do we mask up, wash our hands, make sure that we get vaccinated, for those who are eligible at this moment in time? And so, in my mind, this trichotomy, I don't feel as though I am doing God's work in full unless I look for opportunities to attend to the body, to attend to the mind during depression, during this time, and so much heartbreak and suicidal ideation and suicide and conflicts, and also the soul, to attend to the soul, to feed and nurture the souls, where so many churches are closed down, numbers reduced
Right.
significantly. So I think we have to speak and minister to all three.
I like that, as you said, I like that, the reference to that, because where we let me get that, where we we tend to let me get you in here, brother. You know what,
Take
my
your time.
stuff is going on here. All right. We tend to leave one part of that out, right? We tend to leave out the I'm getting these things mixed up here. 1 second.
Take your time.
All right, come on. Why are we doing that? Oh my goodness, that's not good. All right, I'm gonna have to switch it around. I'm not why I'm losing something here. So we tend to leave out the one side of that, and we deal with the human from the spiritual level, and we don't deal with it from the natural. We don't deal with the emotional aspect. And one
Yeah.
of the reasons why I think this conversation is that important, because right now I think we can't just pray for people. We can't just pray for people like we always do, or just take them to the Bible, because right now it needs more than that. And I
Yeah.
think unless the minister is knowledgeable of that,
Yeah.
and is inspired and motivated to recognize that you can't minister to the partial man and not the whole man,
Yeah.
then if you don't do that, then you're not really doing your ministry at the full level. So I hear you say that, and I'd like you to even say more on that from your level. I'd like to hear you say more than that. Speak
Sure.
to others who are listening, who
Sure.
who who you and I know from ministry level, that the vast majority of our people see
Yeah.
things only spiritual.
Yeah.
and we call to prayer almost everything. And there's something that, you know, in my thinking, prayer is an act of faith.
Yeah.
And the scripture tells us that faith without work is dead. There's something that needs to be done literally and physically that goes along with prayer to get the best result.
Sure. So there's a great reductionism that takes place in our Christian faith, right? There's a great reducing of what it means to what we're called to do. And I think that some way, like even this conversation, right? There's a part of it that one may say, yeah, it sounds radical, it sounds progressive, it sounds forward thinking, but actually it isn't. It's not, right? It's what we are doing, and this way of doing ministry that is, over spiritualize everything, and everything is all about that. That has never been the way. That's not how Jesus operated. I mean, you and I could sit here and we could talk until we turn blue, even though that will never happen, as to the ministry of Jesus, right? We can talk about how he fed those that were hungry. That's ministering to the body. How he healed those, the bodies, whether it's a blind man or a woman that was bent over, right? Or lepers that were diseased, and he rid them of their diseases, right? We could talk about the physical. We could talk about the psychological. I mean, what do we think those, like the woman at the well, who had many men, and those many men had many women, or the woman that was about to be stoned. And Jesus was ministering not only to the spiritual person, but also to the mental health issues that were going on, that will cause a person to reduce the use of their body to something else, right, rather than living wholesome and productive lives. And so Jesus has always encouraged those who were downtrodden, downcast, the nobodies of the world, reminded them of their somebodyness. Those who were cast down, he lifted their spirits, and right, and pointed them that I see you, or Zacchaeus, who was in the tree, I see you, come down. I'm coming to fellowship with you. I'm coming to break bread with you. I'm coming to remind you of your somebodyness. And so it is unnecessary, it is unproductive, it is unwise, and it is unbiblical for us to over spiritualize everything through prayer and through fasting, and all of those are good, and you and I do all of those things. But we become the hearts, the hands, and the feet of God, right on down here below. And so we have to attend to human beings in all the spaces and places and dimensions that we live in. It can't be so one dimensional that, and we see it over and over again, right? We see it over, and if a person is sick, let's just pray. No, go to the doctor as well, right? A couple falls in love and they said, only thing we're going to do is going to pray. We're going to fast. We're going to look for the rainbow over the hill. And if we see that sign, then we know the marriage will take place and it's the right thing for us to do. And then when they hit hard times, it's because they had mental health issues, they had conflict issues, they had differences of personality issues, that you need more than prayer, or not just more than, you need, in addition to prayer, you need to sit down and talk to someone and really unpack some of the nitty-gritties of the relationship so that you may thrive. And then when things fall apart, people blame God, right? God made a mistake. Okay, he showed me the rainbow, but then the relationship ended, and then they lose faith. So we have to move away from this idea that that like feeding people and starting food pantries and starting counseling programs and supporting young people and tending to the elderly as though it's a radical idea. There's nothing radical about that. If anything, what we've done is we've abandoned biblical principles that were in effect and operative and were operating 2,000 years ago.
It is only a perception in my, it's a perception that, and I don't know what happened to my screen here, and it's unfortunate. Maybe that's gonna have to go with this one side in and out. So I'll get you in and I get out. So we'll have to break it like that, but because that's what's happening tonight. But again, I have Dr. Roger Ball with me, who is my friend and minister, fellow laborer, and has studied a lot into the fields that I am interested into. I am fascinated with the expansion of knowledge, because I think personally, if I had the choice, if it was dependent on me, every minister, pastor slash pastor would need to have a good understanding of the human from the trichotomy perspective, and have an understanding of the spiritual, the theological aspect of it, and also the mental and the emotional, the psychological and the behavioral sciences. Because as you say, you can't fully minister to somebody unless you really are able to minister to them at all levels. And as you make mention, Bishop, about the about marriages, there's some people who just pray. You know, every little thing they say, let's kneel down and pray. You know, let's pray to God that God. All those are important. Those
Yeah.
are important. One cannot deny the importance of prayer in one's life,
Yeah.
because and prayer alone won't do. Prayer works with submission and the application of God's word. If there's no application of the word in individual's life, prayer doesn't even do anything,
Yeah.
because prayer is faith, but action, I need to take action by what the word demands of me. And
Yeah.
so if both of us take action with the word, we can find some balance and some camaraderie, and some adjustment and some give and take in the middle, if we
Yeah.
both adjust to God's word. So I want you to tell me a little bit more about as you talk about the marriage thing, because one of the big questions we're asking tonight, as we're gonna keep the conversation going, is what do you see affecting families in the most negative way? And
Yeah.
there's so much to talk about under that question. And I'll pick one by one. But as you mentioned on this marriage thing, because as you say, people, yeah, I find my soul mate. We
Yeah.
don't talk about my soul mate.
Yeah.
This, oh yeah, she is my soul mate, and he is my soul mate. I remember one young man said to me, maybe 30 something years ago, 30, 40 something years ago, he was so excited about finding a girlfriend.
Yeah.
And he wanted to impress the rest of us that he just found this girl that was more than anything. He said we love each other so much that they used to walk, they didn't drive, walk and meet each other coming down the road. And he said, we love each other so much, and we see each other, when we see each other, we just burst out a cry.
That's something else, isn't it?
Just burst out a cry, that because how deep we were in love. But then, and back to one finding my soulmate, and we walk around and we hold hands down the street, and we kiss by the wayside, and we hug, and we do all these wonderful, because we find our soulmate. And all of a sudden, in a short time, you find that people are so distant, they're drifted so far that they can't
Yeah.
even tolerate each other.
Yeah.
And I wonder, what do you find to be maybe the fundamental cause of that? Is it lack of counseling? What is it?
Well, I think, and by the way, I have a book that's coming out probably any day now. I've been writing it for the last year or so, and I've really invested quite a bit of time in it. And the name of the book is Deconstructing Love, navigating intimate
I,
relationships.
I saw that in the bio. I saw that
Yeah.
deconstructing. That's an interesting word, that to deconstruct. Maybe you're gonna have to give us some highlight on what you gonna, what deconstruct mean? Break it down and rebuild it, or what?
People have said, I hope you're going to reconstruct it back afterwards. um, but this whole, and I talk about this in one of the chapters in my book, this whole idea of one and only, or my soulmate. And I think that in a lot of sense, a lot of times people mistaken infatuation for love, right? That hook, that
Mhm.
young man 40 years ago who his emotions are so tied up. The positive, the norepinephrine and the dopamines are just coursing so much through his veins that he cannot contain himself. He can't
I
eat, he
know.
can't sleep. But here's the truth of the matter, though. That is unsustainable, right? Nobody, don't care if you're Romeo and Juliet, right? Bonnie and Clyde.
All
Nobody,
right.
nobody can maintain that level of intensity indefinitely. At some point, the chemicals in your body, bloodstream begins to subside, and your feet begins to come back down to the ground, and you're now faced with not the person that you imagine or that you hope they would be, but the person as is. That's literally in front of you with their bad habits, their idiosyncrasies, their differences of personalities, and all of a sudden you are going to have to face that. And the problem comes in when their feet come down to the ground and now they are facing the person as they are, not as they imagine it, and they do not have the tools, they do not have the capacity, they do not have the grace or the patience to really deal with themselves or the other person. And that's when 1 year, 2 years, 5 years into marriage, all of a sudden it crashes and it burns because a lot of money was spent for the wedding, for the flowers, for the honeymoon, for the church, for the trips, for the photography, for the limousine, but very little time and attention was given to the marriage, right? To the wedding, yes, the marriage, no.
As you said that, I remember, and I'm not going to call it a name, but I remember a wedding some years ago. I remember a wedding some years ago from one famous preacher lady, and she married, and all their decor or flowers and that were imported from Italy. And she was dancing up the aisle and speaking in tongues, going to meet her husband. And,
Yeah.
and shortly after that, she was running him down in a parking lot and throwing punches at him. Start saying,
I
you
know
know.
exactly who you're talking about. Yes.
So the spiritualizing of things is not real. And as you said, one of what I said to people time and again, and I know we weren't here just to talk about marriage, and that's one of the reasons why I'm going to have to talk to you another time, because these are really current issues that
Yeah.
need to be addressed and discussed. One of what I said to people time and again in premarital counseling is that the shortest thing you have in a marriage is your honeymoon.
Mm.
The shortest thing in your honeymoon. Before you know it, the honeymoon season is over, and you're not flying sky high. You have to come back to ground. I just your foot have to touch the ground. You have to come back to reality. And as I said that, I remember I heard about a man who married a woman because he loved her singing. He
Mm.
just loved her singing. Boy, she sing like an angel,
I
and
think
he
I
was
know that one. Go ahead.
and he was so caught up in that the emotions and the connection of the singing, and he paid no attention to the real person behind the song. When she have on maybe the wig and everything looks good, and then he got home, and as he was he's home, and she took off all the
Yes.
makeup. She's gone to bed and she's sleeping, and he looks at her and he saw a whole different person that wasn't singing.
Yeah.
And then what he said to, he woke up and said, honey, get up and sing.
Yes. 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 Yeah. Yeah. That you didn't do justice to it. She took out
I know.
her fake eye. She pulled off her prosthetic legs and she threw
Oh
it
dear
over
God,
the
it would
side. And
definitely.
and by the time she get finished, it was a completely different. Of course, the point that you're making is well taken, which is this here. You need to know the essence, the substance. You cannot make permanent decisions on superficial, variables.
I'm with you. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so let's come to this point now in the COVID era that we are.
Yeah.
And the main question on our promotion is, what do you think is affecting families most negatively? And
Yeah.
you can look at it from any aspect you want. I'm going to leave that to you to look at it from all
Sure.
angles, whether it's going to be COVID. And let me show some little what do you call it out there for you to look at. Is it the COVID, the domino effects of COVID, in the sense that uh, families are home, children are homeschooled, jobs are affected. And one of what I want you to look at too is, and I'm going to give you time to
Okay.
break that through as I throw this out there. Um, for some families,
Yeah.
being home through COVID is a blessing.
Yes.
For some families, it's a nightmare.
Yes.
Because they don't want to spend all that time together. So
True.
you being the therapist and the minister and the social worker, and from all angles of your ministry and experience and involvement, tell me, what do you see overall that affects family the most?
So, and thank you for the time to unpack it a little bit.
That's a
So,
whole lot.
Yes, yes, yes. I'll do the best I can with it. So here's what we do know, right? Human beings, we're creatures of habit in a lot of ways, and we formed what I call the rhythm of life, right? It's a rhythm of life, and the rhythm of life is the ordinary exchanges of life that you've built your relationships, your days, your weeks, your month, your year on, that allows you to function with some semblance of normalcy. Normalcy, to a large extent, has been wiped away. The rug, in a real sense, has been yanked from under our feet, and we are standing or sitting on a rump, so to speak, with no ground or beneath us. And as a result of that, our time has been upended. This whole business of waking up children and sending them off to school, and they wait for the school bus, and they come home at 3 o'clock or whatever time it is, and they do their homework and they get some food and relax and go to bed. Or parent who gets up in the morning, gets the kids out, go to work, come back home, and there's a rhythm to life.
Mhm.
COVID-19 has disrupted that rhythm, and is
Mhm.
really, people are grappling and are struggling to try to find their footing again. In the middle of all of this, people are dying, people are getting sick, churches are closed down, businesses are closed down, schools are shut down, and we have not been here. There's very few people alive right now that has been here before. I believe it was not. It was 1819.
Right.
Was 100 and something years ago that we've been here before, and even so, we've never really been here before. We could all agree on that. And
Right.
so, as a consequence of that, people are now needing to rejigger, if you will, to rejiggle their lives, to reassess, and to adjust how they live in time and in space. Give you a quick example. So my son, who is 16 years old, there's something about getting him up, and I've done this most of his life, helping him, getting him up out of the bed. It's time for you to go in the shower, get up, go to school. Now it's a very different reality where he literally rolls out of the bed, if he even rolls out some days, frankly, and
Mhm.
now he's going to school online. And here's the truth of the matter: there's very little learning that's going on. And I speak as an administrator in public education, very little is going on. Now, imagine this. You or I live in a very small apartment, let's say a 2-bedroom apartment, and
Mhm.
there are 4 kids in there, right? And
Mhm.
mom is working from home, dad is working from home, grandpa may be there as well, or grandma, and there are 4 kids there. Maybe you're struggling and you don't even have the Wi-Fi maybe is spotty, and you don't have enough, you know, electronic devices, iPad or computers, so that
Mhm.
mom is working and dad is working, and the 4 children are going to school, and they're bumping into each other, and the music is playing, and the bathroom is being overrun. Now, what begins to happen? And by the way, now they're having to provide breakfast, lunch, and dinner at home. We actually don't think oftentimes for people who are low income, who are having to when kids go off to school, they get breakfast in most schools, they get lunch in most schools. So
Mhm.
parents, more often than not, are only providing dinner and some snacks in the evening. Now the food is going quick, 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 and it's
Right.
costing hundreds and hundreds of dollars just to put food on the table consistently. The conflict is brewing. People are stepping on each other's toe. The tension is running high. Maybe one of them have lost their job as well. So now
Mhm.
there's less money in the house. Maybe grandma got sick. Someone got sick. Maybe someone even perished from COVID. You see,
Right.
it begins to add up. And what the research is telling us, my brother, again and again, that those who are less privileged or less, financially stable, feels it the most. As a result of that, domestic violence has gone up, child abuse has gone up, divorce rate has increased. And so now, because the rhythm of life has been disrupted, we're seeing all of these untethering coming to bear in our relationships. And so I think that when we look back at this period in history, we will, as you talk about earlier, that that you will understand. I forgot the exact quote. The
Mystery of
mystery of
us.
our history.
Right.
That I think we're going to look back and says, how on God's heaven did we survive this, right?
Mhm.
Because we'll look back and see that this was no joke. this was no joke. And so I think that if that may help to frame it a little bit, just into, and then conversely, I can tell you, like at the beginning of this pandemic, I absolutely love having all of my 4 kids in my house, and my two ones who are in the universities, they came back home. And there was
Mhm.
something that felt so safe for me, knowing that my kids are under my roof and we weren't going outside. They were under my roof. And that made me feel really good. But there are a lot of families that there's a lot of tension. And of course, we bumped head every now and then. But a lot of family, it became very violent. It became very troublesome. And, and bad things happen. And bad things are still happening in a lot of families. I cannot tell you how many couples, and this breaks my heart. I cannot tell you how many couples have come to me when it's too late during COVID, because the divorce paper was either sitting waiting for a second signature, or both signatures were already there, and they come as a last ditch effort trying to figure something else. But the truth of the matter is the door was already closed. Lots of people getting divorced right now.
Wow. I personally, I am not aware. I wasn't aware of that. But again, where you are,
Yeah.
and the hands on and the close up communication with that aspect of people's experiences is a little bit. And thank God, from where I am, I have not experienced it. But I'm not surprised. I'm saddened, but I'm not surprised to hear that. Again, love is important. Knowing, you know knowing how to bear and to forbear, and to work things out. Because if and I think one of what maybe affect us sometimes is that, we're looking for one side to make the adjustment.
Mm-hmm.
We're looking for one side to make the adjustment. Because of our own selfishness, we want the other person to do all the adjustment while we don't make the adjustment. And that's for some people. But on the other hand, there are some people who are caught in a really between the rock and a hard place. Some of these kids, as you make mention, some of these kids uh, go to school, and we heard that when the COVID started, that people are going to be concerned. Lower income families are going to be very concerned, because the only healthy meal, so-called healthy meal, some of these kids get in a day is when they are in school.
Yeah.
And so for that not to be there, and the little or nothing at home. My wife told me just the other day that she heard it on the news that I think it was a what 9-year-old little and school, while they were supposed to be on in the virtual learning,
Mm-hmm.
or the hybrid communication, and she was there, or he was there, not communicating, not there responding, but they heard the voice vaguely say, "I am starving."
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm.
if a child is starving,
That's right.
and to be sitting home trying to do this virtual learning, and to be able to concentrate and to find the vigor and the energy that you
Yeah.
need to keep up with something without an environment around you that you can feed from,
Yeah.
that is like a double whammy.
Yeah. I mean, here's what we know. We've always known this, that hungry children don't learn, right? Like, you begin to be lethargic, you're distracted, I mean, like, hunger demands your attention, not just a little attention, your full, undivided attention. I want to say that again. Hunger demands your attention. It takes no prisoner. And
Whether you want to or no.
whether you want to or no,
Yeah.
doing a Pythagoras theorem, or algebraic, equation will have to take back seat when hunger sits at the front of the classroom. And this actually so you talk about mind, body, and soul. This is actually one of the reasons why in my, and I every single week I have many trucks delivering thousands, scores and scores of food, pallets and pallets of thousands of boxes of food at schools, community centers, churches all across New York City. Because in my mind, and none of those in my mind, if a family takes a box with some milk, some eggs in there, some potatoes, some celery, some strawberries, in some carrots, and maybe some chicken legs or something. They take that home and they feed their kids. That's ministry. That is ministry. And so I think that to talk about the church and churches, I think that we have not yet scratched the surface of what we really, all of us should really be doing. And I find it offensive. This is where my pet peeve, and I go on my soapbox a little bit. I find it offensive where a lot of my brothers, especially those in the South, that oftentimes says that the church is not a social institution and we are called just to preach the gospel of Jesus. Nonsense. It isn't an affront to the work that God has called us to be. And that's what happened when you're middle class, when you're privileged, and when you have your refrigerator full. You could talk from your ivory tower and says that we don't need to do this. We don't need to feed. We don't need to advocate for the poor. We don't need to open our soup kitchens. We don't need to provide counseling services. That's what happens in the United States, even though Jesus himself has told us that if you've done it unto the least of these, my brethren, sistren, children, you've done it also unto me.
As you say that, it is kind of strange to even to imagine that we, from a church perspective, could say that the church is not a social institute. I can't do my proper quote right now, but in paraphrase reference, the scripture tells us. I think Jesus himself talk about somebody come unto you hungry and you wish him well and say, go and be filled. How do you help the man if he's hungry and you're telling him, you're praying with him, and when you could give him something to help him to find something in his stomach, because he can't have a life when he's really hungry, because they said hungry gets your attention whether you want to or no.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's ludicrous in so many ways. And so we need to feed, right? When Jesus says, feed he says, Peter, you love me? Peter said, oh yeah, I love you. I love you beyond this world. He said, Peter,
you know how much I love you, Jesus.
I love you so much. I love you to Mars and back. I love you beyond belief. I love you with all of. Jesus says, well, you want to show me? Show me that you love me. Go and feed them. Yeah. Go and do the work of love. Right. Do the acts of love. And so and to be clear, right? Not everybody can do everything, but all of us should be trying to do all three: feed the soul, feed the mind. Like even right now during the so many people are depression is real. Depression is real. People are sad, they're depressed, and they're hopeless, and they're giving up. And we're just gonna say hallelujah 3 times, turn around and read Psalm 91 and something like that. And sometimes you have to sit with people. You have to bear witness to their suffering. Sometimes people are so far into their depression, so severe is the depression, that they need medication management. They need to see a medical profession, because if your arm is broken, you go and you get it cast. If if your diabetes is out of control, you go and get your insulin, right? And if you feel like you're drifting from God, you find the preacher, you find the word, and you restore that. Thou restorest my soul. If your mind is not working the way it's supposed to, no shame, no embarrassment, no taboo. It is quite okay to say, I am just not well mentally right now. It doesn't make mental illness or being mentally unwell. It's not a crime. It's not a sin. It's not that something is wrong with you. If your arm is broken, you get it fixed. If your mind is not working, or if it's broken, you find the persons or the professionals who can help you to become well. No shame whatsoever.
Listen me, man. Listen me. I know I'm only sorry that we only have an hour right here, and I'm gonna really have to get you back ASAP as soon as Sister Seneca can find a date where I can get you back in. I'd like to continue this conversation, because there's some things that I really want to talk about, and we can't do it because I see the time is already running, because you have other engagements. But as you talk about that, there is no sin to be depressed and to be anxious, and to have mental problem. We talk about the trichotomy, and then we also grew up with the dichotomy. You know, we grew up with the dichotomy that you know, it's either the spiritual or the demonic. So you know, if the person is not spiritually well, then it's demon. So we have to pray out the demon out to that person. We don't have the understanding of the in between, that this person is also human. So all we want to do is to minister to the person's spirit, and pray with them, and then we're done, and then we tell them to trust God. And then we even, you talk about the stigma that may be attached to that we grow up thinking
Yeah.
that if you are a true Christian, if you're really close to the Lord, and if your life is sanctified, you can't have any mental or emotional problem, because that is not of God, that is of the devil. And I think we have done injustice to a lot of our people and caused them to get
Yeah.
worse, because we have not learned how to minister to them. I'm going
Yeah.
to give you the last word on this. I know you have another engagement, and man, I can't believe the time run out this much already. And I really have a lot that I want to talk to you about.
As they say, my brother, time goes fast when you're having fun. So yeah, I mean, I think that is, and it's people like you and I, right? It's people like you and I, the preachers and the teachers and the religious educators and the evangelists and those who wear the collar, those who bear the cross of Christ, for us to destigmatize some of these things that are just unnecessary. I mean, you know what I think about, my brother? I think about the person who struggles with mental health, who for year after year after year has not gotten it attended to. It's like having, forget the gross comparison. It's like having an open wound that is
Hmm.
untreated, that you pretend as though it's not there, and that
Hmm.
all you have to do is you have to go see someone and get it taken care of. Like the business of struggling with mental health, it's okay. We're
Hmm.
wired the way we're wired. And so many people, we haven't even talked about trauma. Like, so many people have been
Right.
through so many traumatic experiences as children, as young adults, all kinds of trauma that I don't care to name them right now for all kinds
Hmm.
of reasons. But there's so many traumas that people have been through. And then one of the things that I'm sure you know this from your own studies, that trauma has compounding effect, right? I
Hmm.
teach it, but I was just teaching this to my students at Fordham University. Trauma has compounding effect. And what do I mean by that? Trauma, unresolved issues. Let's say 10 years ago, something awful happened, a violent experience, a traumatic experience. And now it's 10 years later. And what's happening is that you are now in the middle of a pandemic and things are beginning to fall apart again. Trauma stack up on each other like bricks.
Hmm.
And then what
Hmm.
happens is that they begin to, that's why when we're doing suicidal assessment with adults and with kids, one of the questions we always ask is, have you had a previous suicidal attempt in the past? Do you
Hmm.
have family members who have either completed a suicide or have attempted suicide? Because what we do know is that traumatic experiences have compounding effect. And
Hmm.
so it builds one on top of the other. And so just imagine a person during this COVID time who have already, had mental health struggles before, and now the preacher or the teacher or someone is just saying it's going to be all right. Their intentions may be good. We need not dog them. Their intentions may be good, but if it is not your skill sets to diagnose, to assess properly, it is okay to, at the very least, do not stigmatize the need for mental health. And there's things that people can do. And so I think I should maybe say something on that as well. Like, finding people that you're connected to, do the things that you enjoy, listen to music, right?
Right.
Yes, pray as well, eat healthy, right? Reconnect with loved ones that are meaningful to you, exercise, like meditate. That these are some of the things that you can do the things that you enjoy. In addition to that, you need to seek professional help if that's where you are at the time. No shame, like, no, like, think about the woman again that Jesus, and forget the circumstances that she was in, but I just think about the words that leaped from Jesus's mouth when he said, nobody, right? When
Hmm.
he says, nobody condemns you, right? And he does
Hmm.
it over and over again in affirming this somebodyness. Nobody condemns you, not even you. Nobody condemns you. Even my sins, nobody condemns you. My sickness, nobody condemns you. My shortcomings, nobody condemns you. You are fearfully and
and
wonderfully made.
wonderfully. Oh my goodness, Bishop, I can't I can't believe the time runs off so fast, and you just start touching on some things that are really, you call about pet peeves, some of those things, because I have been concerned ever since maybe many years ago, let's say 20 years ago, 18 years ago, since I branched over into studying the mental aspect of the man, and the physical and the spiritual, and to understand that, listen, you can't ignore that. And as I said, and you made a point about the wound that gets worse. And
Mhm.
as you make mention of that, I thought of, if we were more attentive and aware. And I think one of the problem is a lack of awareness, because
Yeah,
we are not learned ourselves. we
yeah,
we are still one dimensional, because we are all these spiritual beings, and all we do is pray and shout and dance about, and hope that in call down angel from heaven to do something. And when God is saying in his word, just find out the need of the person, and just help them, and help to get him to a doctor.
yeah.
So as you make mention, I thought of something. I thought of a cancer that is at stage 1
Hmm.
versus stage 4.
Yeah,
And if we were able to minister to somebody, when we detect something, if we
right.
could see in the early stages that something is awry here, something is
Yeah,
falling off kilter, and we said, this is not a spiritual problem. Let's get to. And if we don't know, make a reference.
that's right.
Take a
That's
reference. But how would we stay there and pray while people are moving into it, metastasizing and getting worse from stage 2, 3, 4, and now we get beyond the point where they can really help. And it
yeah,
is very, very sad that that becomes part of the church. And I think this conversation, we're just beginning this
that's
conversation.
right.
I'm going to give you the chance to give me a summary, because we just begin to open this up, and I know
Sure.
you have another engagement for me.
Sure. Well, my brother and friend, Dr. Orville Beckford, thank you once again so much for the work, the amazing work that you're doing. Thank you so much for really, and I've been looking at some of your work that you've been doing, including bringing on the scientists and the
Right.
theologians, and the theologian and the scientists are brothers and sisters, and they
Amen.
must sit on the same table and have the same conversation. And so, in a real sense, you're doing God's work. You're bringing into conversation the mental health personnel, the scientists, the doctors, and the theologian to talk about the Trinitarian a concept which is critically important in times like these. So look, you and I, we are on the same team. We're doing the same work, and I'm privileged here tonight to speak to your audience. And thank you so much for the amazing work that you're doing. There's one thing I can say to my brothers and sisters as I leave is that you are not alone. You need not be alone. You were not meant to be alone, and you do not need to walk alone. And even a program like this and a broadcast like this and attending to issues like this, and I know we sort of jump around to different topics, and that's
Yeah.
okay, that we are here to support, right? Find out who the people you have in your network that you could connect with. Right? If you're feeling sad, if you're feeling depressed, you need not feel as though, as a Christian, you should not feel that way. Terence, the great African philosopher, says, I am human, and there's nothing that's human that is alien to me. In other words, anything that the human being can ever go through, I can go through it. And that simply makes me human, not a Christian human, not a sanctified human, but simply a human being. And by virtue of that, let us distill and do away with all the stigmas and the shame and the guilt and the fear. And wherever we need help, let's throw out a lifeline. Let's throw out a raft to somebody who is in need. Because in a real sense, we might as well try to get through this time together. Thank you so much for having me.
Before you go, I know you go, but if I don't tell you this one, I'm going to be in big trouble. Your friend, my wife, who
Yeah,
is a social worker like you, she posed a question. I'm going to pose it. She said,
yeah.
Bishop Ball, can you talk a little about kids who have been spending so much time at home due to COVID and are experiencing physical and sexual abuses with no outlets?
Yeah, sure. Let me. I'll be happy to talk about that. And then I just need. And then my wife is gonna get. I'm gonna get in
I
trouble
know
with my wife if I
we're in
don't.
trouble with our wives, right? So,
If I don't talk about the marriage retreat that is coming up in
oh,
the so just remind me to talk a little bit about that.
okay.
So here's what we do know, and it's a good question that my dear friend, lady First Lady Beckford is raising. I've been doing this work for a long time. As a public school administrator and as I was going to say a former social worker, but I am a social worker, but I mean in terms of my role within
Right.
public education, I'm now an administrator. But I cannot tell you the amount of children that I've sat down with, and I've had to listen in to the things that has been done to them, some of which, by the way, they don't even understand what was being done to them because their innocence just could not, conceive of it, or even on. There you go. You got it back there.
Finally, after all these
After all this time, cannot fully understand or comprehend it. I've had to call the special victims unit more times than I would like to admit. I've had to really think about and breathe before I get out of my car and walk into my home as I try to clear my head of those devastating stories that I've had to listen to and respond to. Jesus himself said that it was better if that monstrous behavior, that person, it would have been better if some, heavy duty,
stone and hung around his neck, right?
some weighted,
Yeah.
thing was tied on them and they sink to the bottom. What Jesus was really saying, in short, is leave the kids alone. Right? Let them be kids. Let them prosper. Give them good memories. Let's not violate and assault their mind and their bodies and their souls. And so here's what I do know, and my colleague, Lady Beckford knows this well as well, and that is school. School is the first line of defense in terms of disrupting child abuse. In fact, what we do know, most children who are abused and who die from physical abuse at the hand of family members, they're usually under 4 years old. And the reason for that is actually because under 4 years old, children are not enrolled in school. Once they go off to school, what tend to happen is somebody in the building, a guidance counselor, a teacher, a social worker, a paraprofessional, somebody sees the bruise. They see the bruise, emotions. They see the bruise, the physical bruise. They see the pain and the suffering, and they're usually able to respond. And I know there's a lot of, stigma and I would say even, distrust for mental health professionals and social workers that they're going to take away our children. But some children should be taken away because the things that are being done to them is really just terrible. And so the First Lady, the only way, and this is why, by the way, schools need to be reopened. And I know I have my own feelings about that, but schools need to be reopened so kids could get 3 meals a day, so that they could feed again their mind, so that their education they could get a proper education, because this is going to have repercussions on young people for years and years to come as they fall through the crack. And the kids who are special education kids who are 2 to 3 years behind, now they're going to be 4 years behind. And so that schools officials could also detect children who are being physically and sexually abused, so that somebody could go up in that house and rescue them. And right now, the truth of the matter is, a lot of them, as you said in the example that she heard on the news, that the kid says, I'm starving.
I'm starving, yeah.
While that kid will say, I'm starving, you know what the other kid is not going to say? They're not going to say, I'm being abused. That's what they're not going to say. They're not going to say, I was sexually assaulted last night. They're not going to say, there's a welt across my... They're not going to say that.
Yeah.
They're going to say, I'm starving, because they've learned the language to say, I'm hungry, but they have not learned the language to say, I'm being abused.
You see, and again, I think, and I'm thinking that the expression of being hungry might be acceptable because they are all hungry.
Yes.
so saying that openly is like speaking everybody's language.
Yes.
To say I'm being abused is breaking some restrictions. Yeah, you know what I mean. So so they're not gonna touch that with a long stick. My goodness. Wow, Bishop, it's good to have you, man. It's good to have you. know
Okay,
your
my
time
brother.
is running out, but you said your
Yeah,
wife said you need to talk about the
yes.
couple retreat coming up. I don't want her to kill you when you go home. So
Sure,
when you
sure.
leave
I'm
this
already
live
home.
stream,
So, all right.
when you leave the live stream, yeah.
So she actually posted it. So let me just read it as she posted it. Couples can register ASAP for next week's virtual couples retreat. It's next weekend. It's March 5th to the 7th at 7 p.m. nightly. So that's Friday, Saturday, Sunday on March 5th through the 7th. It will be an hour and a half each night. So it's not going to be a all night thing. We want to keep it neat and clean, give people the information that they need. Right? It just takes a few minutes to register. Sessions will not be recorded, nor will it be live streamed, because we want to keep it really intimate. A
Very
lot of people
intimate. Yeah,
are
yeah.
doing already. It's on eBrighton. So if people are interested, the cost is only $60 for all 3 nights. So it's essentially $20 a night. And we're bringing in some great speakers. And so this is an aid. So to talk about ministering to the mind, body, and soul, this for me, again, is just another avenue for us to really reach people. My brother, you're doing good work. Stay up there and do not come down.
I appreciate you, man. Your wife promised her that she'll take a look into trying to get you booked for. Hopefully, we can get you on a Wednesday. You're gonna make a sacrifice to get it on a Wednesday.
We'll make it
So
happen.
we can get a bigger audience on a Wednesday, because they look for Let's Talk with the Doc on a Wednesday. We cannot slip in this Friday because we couldn't get you in, but we want to get you on the next Wednesday. So, Sister Ball, you're listening. I needed to get my brother up on a Wednesday night, 8 o'clock, so we can have a hour and a half conversation. There's a lot to talk about.
Let's do it, my
Thank
brother.
you, my friend. I'm looking forward to the next time. God bless you.
God bless you
Stay
until next
safe,
time.
stay encouraged, stay inspired, and keep on working.
Thank you, my brother. God bless.
Appreciate it.
All right, bye-bye.
Bless you, my friend. All right, all right. That was Bishop Raja Ball who joined me on this discussion. And my friends, thank you for joining me too. I hope that you enjoy this. And if you have not yet subscribed to my YouTube channel, I hope that you would do that now. It's free, and make sure hit the bell. So after you hit the bell, so you'll be able to be notified when I go live. You're not following on Facebook, do that. It's a prime time to do that now. You'll never know who's going to join me next. And by the way, for your information, next week, Wednesday evening, Bishop Les Graham, one of the most favorite overseers of Jamaica, will join me live on Let's Talk with the Doc. I look forward to seeing you next week, Wednesday at 8 o'clock with Bishop Les Graham. We're going to have a lot to talk about. I see you next time. Have a great night. Thank you for joining me. Don't forget, even now, you can still share with your friends. Hit that share button. Spread it around. If you think the discussion was important and necessary, share it. Make sure your friends get a chance to watch it. I'll see you next week on Let's Talk with the Doc. Thanks, my friends, for watching. All of you on Facebook, on YouTube. God bless you. Thank you. See you next time.